I want to begin by introducing myself. My name is Alon Shalev. I'm the Executive Director of American Friends of Hand in Hand. I'm here together with Lee Gordon, co-founder. Lee, thank you for joining us. And I want to thank you all, whatever time of day, whatever time zone you're in, for taking the time to join us. Thank you for being such generous donors and tireless ambassadors. I hope you're going to connect today to what is a really critical topic at this time. If you have any technical problems, please reach out to Andrea Dyer, DYE, in the chat. And since we do have so many people, could I ask everyone to take a moment and mute yourselves? Likely there's a microphone button in the bottom left-hand corner. If you have any questions during the chat, please, if you have any questions, please put them in the chat. And we're going to try and get to as many as we can. We hope you be inspired to share with friends what you hear as we try to raise awareness, as so many of you were introduced to us by friends. So I'd like to introduce our three speakers today. Maya Savir is the author of On Reconciliation, which is about the reconciliation process that took place in South Africa and Rwanda. She's also a human rights activist and the country director in Israel of Search for Common Ground. And Dr. Nasreen Haddad Haj-Yahya is a hand-in-hand parent, the co-founder and co-CEO of NAS Research and Consulting, and a renowned expert on Arab society. And Niv Sarig, who is a hand-in-hand parent and a prominent social activist. Thank you all for joining us today. I know it's evening time for you. Maya, can I invite you to begin?
Sure. Thank you, Alon, and thank you for inviting me hand in hand. It's really an honor. I think later on we'll be able to touch on the really unique work that Hand in Hand is doing. I'll maybe give a brief introduction of myself, and then we'll move on to the other panelists. And I hope we have as much time as possible to take questions from you. We can make it more of a discussion. My name is Maya. I live in Tel Aviv. I'm the mother of four. I've been a human rights and peace activist all of my life. And I'm also a writer. And in my previous position, I was executive director for almost a decade of an Tel Aviv-based NGO focusing on malnutrition, prevention, and treatment. And this brought me to Africa. I worked in South Africa and Rwanda, the Democratic Republic of Congo, Kenya, Uganda, Ethiopia. But it turned out that the first two places I visited on the continent were South Africa and Rwanda. And it just turned out that my first visit to South Africa was just a few months before one of the wars Israel had with Gaza in 2014, Tzuk. And my first visit to Rwanda was just a few months after that. And the difference was remarkable. Although I had been, as I mentioned, active in these areas for many, many years, I came from here. We all know this. We live in a neighborhood where the discourse is always around what is not possible. There is no partner. There is no solution. There is no future. This is what we're hearing. And then I found myself in South Africa and Rwanda, two societies that were really drowning in their own conflicts, and these conflicts seemed unresolvable. And then something happened. We can touch upon that later on, but something happened. There was a point in their history where these societies decided to take their own future into their own hands, and something changed. And this intrigued me. And I mentioned earlier, I'm a writer. So for me, this is my preferred mode of understanding the world, understanding reality. And this is how I embarked on writing on reconciliation. All my previous books were fiction. And I wanted to understand what it means to reconcile, what reconciliation is. And actually, this is how I went about doing this. I spoke to people all over, and I tried to make this an exchange. I said I offered to teach them what I came to teach about growing spirulina, which is a superfood, at the community level. And and I asked them to teach me what they know from their own experience on reconciliation, because we come from a neighborhood where we don't know the first thing about reconciliation. So just a few thoughts before opening the floor to your questions. Two really interesting observations. The first is that when the people I spoke to found out that I was from Israel, the reaction was very interesting. Very different in South Africa and Rwanda. South Africa, more critical towards Israel. Rwanda, not so much. But there was a common denominator, and that is a sense of pity that I felt towards me. Now, sometimes this was very reserved and hinted, but sometimes it was just outright, oh, really? You're from the place where the Jews and the Arabs are still not getting it? And they were like, how can you still be there? And it was very intriguing for me. And another observation goes to the psyche. It's a psyche that is I think the best way to demonstrate this is imagine a therapy session. You sitting with your therapist and looking at yourself and your relationships with the other. This is sort of how it feels when to be in a society that has begun a process of reconciliation. Everyone reflects on themselves and on the other to try and better understand. And this is, again, in very stark difference to what we are experiencing here, where most of us are, most of the time, grading the other, saying to the other what they are not doing, how they can be better, instead of looking at ourselves. So I think this is another very interesting observation. And before we move on to reconciliation, I do want to say something about conflicts, about wars, because, I think we think, both Israelis and Palestinians, that our conflict is the most complicated conflict that ever was, that it is the most painful, the bloodiest, the longest, um, and it's normal. People who live in conflict, who are immersed in their conflict, think that it is unresolvable and that it is the most difficult. And this is actually why I wrote the book, or one of the reasons. And this is why I try to bring this perspective, because when you look at other conflicts, the first thing you see is that all conflicts have the same structure. They don't have this necessarily have the same content, and they can vary in their intensity, but they all have the same structure. And I'll say a few sentences about the structure, and then we can move on. So this is how they're built. There is always a very strict separation between us and them. This is true for all conflicts, us and them. There is always something that both us and them want. Now, this something can be land, it can be power, it can even be narrative. But both us and them want this. And the third portion of this structure is the relationship between us and the thing that we want, or them and the thing that they want. And it's a relationship of that only one can have, which means that either we can have the thing, the territory, the land, power, the narrative, or they. This is the only kind of relationship that can exist. And this is at the basis of all conflicts. And it's good to keep in mind, because I think it also gives us some perspective on our conflict. And maybe later on, when we'll get to the reconciliation part, We'll also look at the common denominator of reconciliation, because there is a common denominator and there is an essence to reconciliation, something that without it, there cannot be reconciliation. Thank you. You're muted.
All right. We all live on Zoom and still do that. Thank you, Maya. And I loved how you highlighted the tendency to always judge and examine the other and not our own actions. I think that's a really important point. Thank you. Niv, can I invite you?
Yes, of course. Hello, everyone. Thank you, Alon. Thank you, Hand in Hand, for this opportunity. Okay, so a bit like Maya, I will tell a bit about myself and also why is it important for me to be here and how do I see hand in hand reconciliation and in general what is going on us here in our piece of land. So yeah, I'm Niv Sarig. I hope to be an active parent in the hand in hand community near Kfar Saba. It's called El-Bayadar, actually, where our bilingual school takes place. Me and actually my family, my spouse, also my three boys, we are deeply involved in building connections between Jews and Arabs, in general families, like Goni, which is my youngest. He's on the third grade in Alif-Beit. Alif is the Arabic letter for, as Aleph as the first letter in Hebrew, and Bet is the second letter in Hebrew. So our school is called Alif-Beit specifically, and he studies together with Nil, Nasreen's daughter, in the same class. I hope they're good friends, actually. But being in hand is not just education for Goni, for my child. It's also about shaping the future of how we live in our country and land. My personal story goes back to 1996. It's both of loss and hope, I must say. My older brother, sorry, a guy, he killed in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict in 96. A guy was killed by a Palestinian sniper in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And I joined actually quite soon after quite a long time after my parents joined the Parent Sickle Family Forum. It's another NGO in Israel that together Israelis and Palestinians that lost their loved ones in the conflict joined forces actually. And through dialogue meetings and dialogue in general, try to engage with each other. I must say that dialogue for me was not just some ideology. It was part of my personal healing, engaging with Palestinians and getting to know their grief and their personal story gave some very meaningful way of experiencing the loss of my brother, and also for my parents as well. And I learned actually that recognizing each other, especially the other pain, doesn't erase it. Not mine, neither there, but it allowed me and also us, I believe, to see the shared humanity of both of us. And it, as I said, it helped me to at least begin to heal. Maybe it will take entire life, but for sure, it helped me a lot. As I said, I don't think reconciliation is just an abstract ideal. I think it's a real necessity for our both societies. And I specifically, because both of us, Israelis and Palestinians, I know that from the Parent Sickle Family Forum, we cannot wait for a political solution. We need to start from grassroots. And I think that what I'm doing together with Goni, and what my family is doing in hand, is maybe the most important thing I could do for him, for us, for my family, and for sure for both societies, because we are creating an active space where this type of understanding and also trust can flourish, actually, more than anything else. And yes, hand in hand is exactly this space as I see it. It's not easy, but neither reconciliation nor dialogue. It's like something that requires a constant, I think, both courage and patience and willingness to engage in painful moments, painful truths. And I think that some of the time we are doing it, the parents in hand are doing that, like meeting and talk with each other and getting to places where I hope lowering both fear and suspicious and some mistrust that probably we still have for sure from our historical trauma and from yesterday, and also probably from tomorrow as well. But I don't think it's impossible. Like many people, I've been in Ireland. Maya talked about South Africa and Rwanda. I've been in Ireland. I read a bit about Cyprus and other places. We've been there like Israelis and Palestinians in Ireland, and they are more or less after the political resolution. We are still way ahead ours. But they said, how could you reconcile in the middle of violence, in the middle of all these terrible things that are happening? And what I say is that we must do that. We have no other option. It's the only option. There wasn't a different one, and there will never be. Because I know the price that people are paying from this and other conflicts as well. But we need to be persistent with that, both with dialogue and with reconciliation. I learned it from Maya. We need to choose reconciliation over and over again, day after day. And this is what we are doing in hand. I'm happy to say that for Goni, it's not a choice. It's like it's a daily activity. He gets to school, he meets Neil or Abud or Amos or whoever he meets there, his best friends. I just mentioned few, and there is some challenge in this daily activity, mainly for us, the parents, and clearly for the staff. But for them, it's the most accurate groundwork that we can take to make our future different. And this is exactly what he is doing, like in a daily activity in his school. And I believe it's the best thing that could happen. Maybe last thing I want to mention, I go back to October 7th and this terrible, horrible, horrendous war that started right after in our region. And I remember telling Muhammad Kunduz, he is the principal of our school, that I feel that, okay, it wasn't October 7th, well, a couple of weeks later after schools opened again and everything. But I remember telling him after a day or two, with sirens all around and the trauma and the pain and actual fear from everything, I told him that I feel that I'm sending Goni to the safest place in the Middle East for so many reasons. And for me, it was a place where I could regain the trust that I had before, and I know that we all will have. And this is the role of this community in my life, in my personal healing, as I said, and meeting people, listening to their story, telling your own, and growing children in a different situation where they know each other like eye to eye and talking in the same language in the two languages, getting to know both cultures and societies and narratives, stories, histories. It's the best thing we can do today and the only thing we can do to get to a place where we can live here together. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Niv. And I just want to stress one thing that Niv mentioned, because I know when people think of the hand-in-hand schools, we think of the children in the schools. But this is an entire community. The parents are involved. The parents are going through the processes, as Niv just mentioned. You're dropping off your children in the morning and picking them up again in the afternoon. And I loved what you said about,
Yeah, maybe I know that's awesome what you just said. I'm going to add just one more sentence
please.
because it's really important, as you said. So it's an activist action that are being done by the parents of hand-in-hand Jews and Arabs. It doesn't really matter how active they are in the day-to-day, but the decision is challenging, complicated, and it needs plenty of daily effort and also other, like all the activities and the great community we have around the school. We're actively engaged in it, but even just sending our kids to there is already an a beautiful activism that people can do. Thank you.
Thank you, Niv. That's exactly what I wanted to hear, and I want people to understand that it's a much bigger community than just the magic that happens in the classroom. Nasreen, can we pass it over to you?
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Good evening. Good morning. I feel very privileged to be here with you. And if I understand, I'm the only Palestinian here in the Zoom. So it's very important for me to say that I'm Palestinian. I'm part of the Palestinian people, and I'm part of. I have a large family in Gaza. So it's very important for me to say that although Niv talked about what is happening, what happened in October 7 and the awful massacre, but I need also to say that my own family, my about 500 people that living in Gaza now, and the 2 million innocent people that living in Gaza, they live in very hard. They suffer from illness. They don't have any food, don't have any roof behind above their heads. So Gaza is an awful place to be in those days, and I'm part of those people. So although I'm an Israeli citizen, but I also part of the Palestinian people. So to be part of the community of hand in hand, I think this is the only place that I feel within safe to talk about my Palestinian identity, to talk about the suffer of the two people, the fact that I have family in Gaza, and I have also friends that were murdered, were killed during the massacres that happened at October 7. I think that this complexity can be welcomed only in hand community. I don't need to say a lot about what is happening within our society, both Arab and Jewish society, as the fact that every community is מתכנסת לתוך עצמה.
It draws into itself.
Converging. Yeah.
Included. Yeah.
Yeah, and the fact that we don't feel comfortable with each other in universities, we can see the segregation between Palestinian student and Jewish student. The fact that it's this specific government, which is the most right-wing government that we had ever before. The fact that people like Smotrich and Ben-Gvir are running our lives and trying to do whatever they can to ruin every shared society that was built during the last 3 decades. It's not something that we should ignore. But I would like to say that as a mother, okay, I don't in my daily life, I work as a researcher. I work a lot with the government. I deal with inequality issues. Especially when we talk about the integration of the Arab minority within the workforce, in the economy, and also inequality within the education system. And I know how the government allocated budgets when we talk about the Jewish system, the three streams, the ultra-Orthodox education system, and also the secular and the Tzionut Datit religious Zionist, yeah. The way that the government allocated budget is within those schools, and the way that the government allocated budget is to Arab schools. I know that there is a lot of discrimination, and the fact that instead of having education systems that close the gaps and giving the people opportunity to meet each other, this government is building and opening more and more gaps between the different groups within the Israeli society. So for me, hand in hand is the only space that I know that the way that Goni, Niv's sons, is he and Neil, Goni and Neil, have the same teachers, the same spaces, the same principles, the same curriculum. The fact that Niv and Neil, both of them can talk about what has happened, but both of them can talk about the awful massacres that happened at October 7, and both of them can talk about what is happening in Gaza. Both of them can talk about the Nakba and the Shoah, and both of them can celebrate Ramadan and Pesach. I'm sorry. I'm really sorry.
Don't apologize. Take your time.
There is no other place in Israel that gives our children the opportunity to have a real connection and to see each other as a human being, not as an enemy. And the fact that Goni can speak Arabic and the fact that Neil can speak Hebrew fluently, when the majority of our Arab students, I have my Carmel, she's 20 and she's studying law at Tel Aviv University. And the first time that she had any real connection with Jews was when she started to study at Tel Aviv University at law school. And the fact that Neil, from the age of 3, have the opportunity to be in contact with Jewish people and to talk about their own pain and to talk about her own pain, and the fact that she can draw the 2 flags. And I know that also Goni drawing the 2 flags, the Palestinian and the Israeli one. For me, it's a magic. For me, it's the only place that give me hope. And I know that if we can scale the model of hand in hand, and every Jewish and Palestinian child in our homeland can have the same privileges that our children have, I believe that we can really build a different and a much better, not only Israel but a Middle East. Because I'll stop here and
Thank you, Nasreen. That's beautiful. And I just want to stress what Nasreen said about how separated we are, and how so often the first time that we have a meaningful non-transactional interaction with the other is at university. And for such a tiny country, it's something that's always been kind of amazing for me. And we're bridging this gap at hand in hand in such a meaningful way. I want to invite people to put questions in the chat. Sorry, Maya, were you going to say something?
Yeah. I would like to just comment on a few of the things that both Niv and Nasreen said. First of all, Nasreen, I know you have family, so for you in Gaza, so for you it's unimaginable. But I want you to know that I am with you at every moment, and I am so ashamed. And I do think that, the conflict, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, is not new, obviously, but something has changed in the past year and a half. And this is in order for the horrendous attacks of October 7th to happen, these acts needed to be separated from any soul. A person with a soul cannot do this. And many of the actions that Israel is doing, again, we need to separate ourselves from our morals and our soul. And essentially what I want to say is that many people say, well, Jews and Palestinians don't speak the same language because, Hebrew and Arabic, but it's not true. We are speaking the same language that has no soul. And this is something that we need to bridge. And at the beginning of when I began to speak, I tried to illustrate the structure of all conflicts, and I stressed the separation, the us and them, and what Hand in Hand is doing is challenging this. The importance of this cannot be exaggerated. Every day, what you guys are doing is challenging the separation and creating a space, a shared space, when the powers that are controlling us are doing everything that they can to keep us apart. And so this is, to me, it's almost sacred. And also, Niv, I want to say something about, you said creating the spaces, and you mentioned activism. And I do want to, offer us some perspective, because when we turn our gaze to conflicts that have been resolved, and we look at the years before the resolution, what we see is that there is a very active civil society. And the role of civil society in this sense is to prepare a society to be able to accept peace and reconciliation, sometimes even to prepare the solutions. What you are doing is preparing the day after this conflict, and you're holding the space. And I'm sure that when the time comes, and it will come, we will see this. And one more thing I would like to say before we opened the questions. You guys mentioned your kids, and I want to say something about the wisdom of kids, and maybe to say it, and maybe it's also something about this war and every war. In 2014, during the war, I picked my son up from day camp. He was 8 years old at the time. And it was during the war, so once in a while, there were sirens in Tel Aviv, and I was contemplating where I would run, which building we would run to and hide if there was a siren. And we were speaking, and I asked him, like every day, how was your day? And he said, okay. And then I asked him, what did you do? And he said, today we played IDF against Hamas. And I felt like, I was choking, but, I didn't say anything. And I said, how did you play IDF against Hamas? And he said, some of the kids were IDF and some of the kids were Hamas. We took paper, we scrunched it up into balls, and we threw it at one another. And then I took another deep breath, and I realized what I was asking. And I asked him, who won? And he shrugged and he said, no one. After a while, we just got tired, so we stopped. So, a comment from the wisdom of children on really the futility of wars. And again, when this will be over, and when people are tired enough, we will need to come together and discuss the future for our children. And before we open the floor to questions, I do want to make a general comment about reconciliation. Reconciliation is work. It's really, really hard work. But it begins with a decision. And for me, I was very interested in what the components of reconciliation are. What really needs to happen for a society to reconcile. And although I had been an activist and thinking about these issues and writing about them for many years, when I actually met and worked with people who lived in reconciling societies, I was surprised that some of the components that I was sure that were a must were actually not a must. They were a part of the process, but they didn't have to be there at the beginning. One of these components is forgiveness. And the reason I want to say this is because, you know, we mentioned Niv and Nasreen, we mentioned October 7th, and we mentioned the horrendous, you know, the horrendous acts of October 7th and the horrendous acts that we're committing in Gaza. And I think that for most of us, that we have an intuitive connection between forgiveness and reconciliation. And we're actually quite sure that one cannot exist without the other, that we must forgive in order to reconcile. And many of us in Israel and in Palestine think that after everything that has happened in the past year and a half, we can't forgive. And I actually meet these people who are saying, you know, I can't forgive about this, to which I want to respond and say, it's okay. It's okay, because forgiveness is a part of the culture of reconciliation. It is a goal that we all aspire to, but there are acts that are horrendous, and there are people who have suffered a tremendous loss, and they feel that they can't forgive. And a society that has chosen to reconcile is a strong society. The fact that we are not able to do that is a reflection of how weak we are, actually. When we are strong enough to embark on this process, we will be able to contain those individuals within us who find it too difficult to forgive. It's okay. And there is a component, there is a heart to reconciliation. And I'll end on that and then open for questions. I'll show you a picture. You see the cover of the book, there's an artichoke on it, because the question I asked myself when I wrote the book is if reconciliation is an onion or an artichoke, right? Because an onion has only layers. There's no heart to it. And an artichoke has many layers, but it has a heart. And I was really intrigued by that. Is there a component that without which there will never be reconciliation? And there is. Reconciliation is not an onion. It's an artichoke. So the heart of reconciliation goes like this. Both sides of the conflict need to acknowledge and accept that neither is going anywhere, that both sides to the conflict are always going to be there, that the rights of both sides in the shared space, in that thing that both sides want, are equal. And thus, the future of the space needs to be decided upon together equally, with all the sensitivity to the narrative, the history, the needs of the other. This is the heart of reconciliation, and this is something that we need to keep in mind, because without this, there will not be reconciliation. But when you really think of it, it's not very complicated. It's not easy, but it's not complicated.
Thank you, Maya. It's not complicated, and yet it is. It feels
It's hard. It's hard. It's not complicated, but it's
Maya, we're getting some requests for you to put your link to your book in the chat. Could I ask you to do that?
Yes, I will just say that my book has not yet been, it's actually now, there's a translator working on it, but it now exists in Hebrew. So I will do that.
Thank you. And let me ask Niv and Nasreen, there's a question here. How have you been able to transform your pain into what you see as the only way? Because most people seem to not be able to go in that direction, but rather they go deeper into the hate, and I'm going to add into the pain. So Niv, would you like to go first?
Okay. Unless Nasreen, you want to go first. It's okay.
I would love to start if it's okay, Niv.
Please. Yeah, of course.
My family, before Israel state was established, used to live in Jaffa, and large part of my family, not large part, all my family left to Gaza, except my grandfather, and he lost all his property, and he became from a very rich man to a very poor man. That after he lost all his property and his family, he went to work as a pharmacer at his own, as a worker, as a simple worker in his orange juice. Okay, so, and So he lost his family, he lost his property, but he believed in peace. So if my grandfather that lost his family and lost his life and didn't have the chance to live a normal life, and he had the ability to forgive the state of Israel and to be an activist and to be kind of bridge between the Palestinian people and between the Israeli people. Who am I to not to forgive and not to believe in peace and to try to be this kind of bridge? And I can say that he was part of the peace movement, and he was a part of Shalom Achshav, Peace Now, Peace Now movement that unfortunately today it's a very weak movement in Israel, and there were a few Palestinian part of this move within Israel, and he was my role model, and he believed in people, he believed in hope, and this is the reason that I do the same. I'm trying to לחקות אותו.
To follow
Copy him, be inspired by him.
Yeah,
exactly. Thank you.
So I would like to thank you, Nasreen, and your grandfather as well, because that's amazing to hear that kind of a story. I think, Alon, I gave an answer to that on my previous talk. I think that the price that we all pay is the type of incentive that I can find in order to do whatever we can in order to prevent this type of cost from anyone on this land. When I started to talk about October 7th and the horrendous war after, I meant the war in Gaza and the terrible things that happened there, of course, and people are paying price, and we need to do whatever we can so people will live. First of all, live in secure, be secure, and also live in equality and be able to flourish. And I heard Nasreen talk several times. Every time I was touched, moved, and excited to hear her because the way she talks about Nil, about our children, what we do, always inspires me as well. And I realize how unnatural it is to be in our organization hand in hand, because I think people outside of Israel, and I work in high tech, whatever, the computer industry, and we are a global company. I know people from abroad, and they're always very puzzled about how natural it is to be separated in Israel. Like, the separation is not just organized and built by the system. They are amazed that there are Arab schools and Jewish schools, and within the Jewish community we have, like as Nasrid said, ultra-Orthodox and secular and non-secular, etc. And the segregation is built that way, but it's also perceived as supernatural. No one even think about the possibility of taking down these segregations and these walls. And when you tell about your day life, about going to a bilingual school of Jews and Arabs, most of people I talk with, even good close friends, are at the beginning are almost shocked in Israel about the possibility of Jews and Arabs living together. And I can take it several steps forward. Again, October 7th and the horrible war in Gaza and all of that is being done. Today, the natural perception is, if before October 7th, people hardly believe this conflict can end, today, the natural perception is that it will never end, and that's the only way it can be. Like, this level of violence and death and terrible things happening to everyone. But this will not be the case. I'm sure about it, because history will turn around. There will be a turnover. It happened in Ireland, in South Africa, and Rwanda, as I learned from Maya, in Cyprus, in many other places, and people never could expect this turnover of history. And when this happened, as Maya said, I think hand in hand has a role in it to facilitate the grassroots work of dialogue and meeting between the societies and the humanization that we can make, not just within the Israeli state society, but also, as said, in the Middle East. And this is only about dialogue and about meeting people, and no better than children meeting each other at their early stages to bring this future to be, just to be.
Yeah.
I just want to add on what you said, Niv. When we look at history, I want to say two things about history. One is that history is not linear. It's unexpected. And, just a few moments before apartheid started to collapse, nobody saw it coming. And we can say that for other places as well. But something we really all need to keep in mind, all wars end. It's in their nature. The question is how long it's going to take and how many casualties, what the price is going to be. And what we are doing here, what you guys are doing, is really laying the foundations to bringing this day closer.
Thank
And
you.
we need to scale up, as I said. We need
I have
to
another
scale up.
question.
We need you.
Sorry, Niv, can you say that again?
No, I said that, as I said before, we need to scale up, and we need you for that, for sure. So it's important to say.
So there's a number of questions here. I'm going to try and roll them together. The only place that has been safe to talk about Palestinian suffering, where we can hold this complexity. Can you give an example of how you see hand in hand makes room for this complexity, first of all, with parents, and then there's another question asking the same complexity with children, knowing that Jewish parents are going into the army, Arab parents have family in Gaza, and first of all, how you deal with this complexity with the parents, and then secondly, how you deal with it with children.
Would you like to start?
Yes, I can, of course. So it's hard and complex for sure. It's you touched two of several points that are I think that requires a lot of effort in our joint society community, hand-in-hand community. Again, the only method I know is dialogue, is saying that, is laying the hard truth on the table and conflict with it together under the assumption that we are here to make everything better for everyone, and under the realization that violence is not an option in any way, no way or another. But it's not easy, and the span of the ideology also in hand community is not narrow. I wouldn't say narrow enough, but it's not narrow. So there are people of all kind of views, and the only way to bridge between them is to make an active dialogue between all part of the community. We packed aid for Gaza and also for Israeli Bedouins at the beginning of the war, and also later on, over and over again. We had dialogue meetings in the community exactly on this situation before and after the war started. And as I said before, it's a constant active effort that always need to be maintained. By the way, also after the peace will emerge and after the reconciliation will arrive, it will never end. Like the narratives will continue to be a bit separated. Some understanding will always need to be learned between the two sides, and it's a constant effort, and it's what we are doing.
Thank you, Niv. So I agree with all what Niv said, but I want to say that it's not our first year in hand school. We have a strong friendship. We have been for me, it's my 5th year as a parent in Yad-Bayat school. So all the relationships that we have building during the last 5 years are built on trust, on empathy, on knowing each other, on visiting each other. So the fact that it's not our first year, it make it much more easier. I believe that if it would be the first year, when the massacre of October 7 and the war in Gaza happened, it would be much more difficult to keep us together. But when we have a lot of activities and we have a lot of dialogue evening and we have events that we visit each other, so it make it much more easier, and it give us the safe space to talk about our identity, our families, and also sometimes it's not easy for us to hear the fact that part of the parents are serving in IDF, while we know that IDF is attacking our families in Gaza. But we try to להכיל את המורכבות.
Contain
the complexity. Contain the complexity.
Yeah.
Contain the complexity.
Because it is complicated. It's not that easy. And with this specific government, with Netanyahu and Ben Gvir and Smotrich, that trying to ruin every safe space, and what is the police is doing with the Palestinian minority within Israel when they empathize with their families and with their people in Gaza. So sometimes it became much more difficult, but we feel very safe in our community because we have the chance to talk about our about our fears, and about our pain and what is happening to our people and to our society.
Thank you, Nasreen.
It's a safe place.
And I want to there's a lot of questions here. All the technical questions, I want to encourage people maybe to send an email. Leah, if you could put one of our emails into the chat for people, that would be great. I just want to end with one last question before I finish, and I've just lost it. Nasreen, we do have another Palestinian here on the chat. I hope I'm saying your name.
Yeah, Munir, now I see him.
Hi.
And Munir asks,
Munir.
I'm going to
Hello.
ask you to answer really shortly because so we can close. But Nasir asks, as a Palestinian peace activist involved in dialogue efforts in the US, it has been hard to get the Arab Palestinians to be involved because there is a lot of anger and trauma. Do you have any tips or suggestions? Maybe what keeps you going?
Wow, it's a hard question. לאה, אני אשמח שתתרגמי אותי לפחות בחלק הזה.
I'd be happy to translate you, Nasreen.
Thank you so much. אני חושבת שבסופו של יום, סיפורים, ולהביא את המקום המאוד מאוד אישי, זה בסופו של יום מה שמזיז משהו אצל אנשים. זה בהתחלה לפתוח את הלב.
You can answer in Arabic too.
I can't do it in Arabic, but you can, please. I think at the end of the day, what really moves people are personal anecdotes, personal stories. That's what allows people really to open their hearts.
That's good.
ואני
Yes,
חושבת
I agree.
בסופו של יום, אני חושבת שאין לנו את הפריבילגיה כשני העמים לוותר אחד על השני. בסוף היחסים שלנו והחיבור של שני העמים זה משהו שהוא meant to be, ולכן או שזה יהיה lose-lose או שזה יהיה win-win, ואני יודעת שרק באמצעות אקטיביזם זה יכול להפוך להיות win-win לשני הצדדים ולשני העמים.
I think also at the end of the day, we don't have the privilege to give up one people on the other. We're destined to work through this together, and either we're going to both lose or we're both going to win. And that's what we need to keep in mind.
ואני רק אצטט את נשיא המדינה לשעבר רובי ריבלין, שאמר שהתברכנו בלחיות ביחד. זאת לא כללה, אלא זו ברכה. ואני מתייחסת לציטוט הזה כאל, זו בעצם המשנה שלי. אני חושבת שהתברכנו, לא הייתי רוצה לגדל את הבנות שלי בסביבה שהיא הומוגנית, אלא בסביבה שמדברים בה שתי שפות ושחיים בה אנשים שונים אחד מהשנייה.
I want to also quote the previous president of Israel, Ruby Rivlin, who said that we have been blessed to live together. It's not a curse, it's a blessing. And I personally wouldn't want to raise my children in a homogeneous society. The heterogeneity is a blessing for all of us.
אבל אני לעולם לא אסכים שהבנות שלי יהיו אזרחיות סוג ב' במולדת שלהן. בסוף זו המולדת שלי, אין לי מולדת אחרת, ואני רוצה להיות שווה בין שווים בתוך המולדת שלי.
And in the end, I will never agree to let my daughters be second-class citizens. This is their homeland. They deserve equality, and they deserve everything that any other citizen deserves.
It's a great place for us to end. Thank you. I need to be mindful that it's 10 o'clock here, or whatever time it is your time. I want to thank you, the three of you, Niv, Maya, and Nasreen.
I want to say just something small, if it's okay, because I want to add to the motivation.
Really small.
Yeah, very small. Munir, you asked about the motivation. It's really, really hard. And I want to say, I want to quote my favorite poet, Mahmoud Darwish, and I'm quoting very, very,
love it,
very freely. He said in one of his poems, I will love my life because if I die, I will be ashamed of my mother's tears. And this is what I want all of the Israeli and Palestinian, the Jewish and Palestinian kids to know. You have a mother, keep your life, keep the life of the other, because if you don't, your mothers will be very, very sad. And everyone I spoke to in reconciling societies said, sure, it's very hard, but we're doing it for the next generation. And this is what we're doing it for the next generation, and hand in hand, this is what you're doing. So thank you.
Alon, I'll have last sentence if possible. I'll have last sentence if possible. Sorry. First of all, Masa al-Khair, Munir. I think I'm privileged to have Nasreen with me, and I think that the inclusivity and the ability to be in a joint society, this is the real value, as Nasreen said. And for you, Munir, I think meeting people eye to eye and meeting them face to face and talking with them, no matter who is the other one, that's the real magic. Telling your story, hearing the other side, being the real listening mode of operation, and trying to feel the other side. I think nothing brings more humanity to our life than just meeting the other people.
Well, thank you, all three of you. This was a very genuine and authentic conversation. We really could have gone on for another hour. I want to thank everyone for joining us. If you asked a question and we didn't answer it, you will see Leah's email in the chat. Just send an email to her and one of us will get back to you. We'll be sending out a recording of this and also some short sound bites from our speakers. And when you receive this, I want you please to try and think of 3 people you can share this with and help us spread the word. The hand-in-hand schools are such an unknown quantity here, and yet a beacon of light and hope in the darkness. Without your generous help, none of this would be possible. To those of you who celebrate Hag Pesach Sameach, and thank you everyone for joining us.